Welcome to the Deep Dive, episode 23. Today, we're diving into a city in Alabama that some are calling, well, they're saying it eats people alive.
Wow, okay.
So that's pretty dramatic, right?
Yeah.
Is it just crime and poverty, the usual stuff, or is there something else going on, something darker? Is this place actually cursed, or are we just, looking at systemic failures, but on a more intense scale? I mean, is there something truly unique about the challenges in this one city, or is this stuff happening everywhere, just maybe more visible here?
Yeah. It's a good question.
That's a heavy one for sure. We've been looking into some really raw personal stories and perspectives coming out of this city, and it's pretty heavy stuff.
Like that.
So today, we're going to try to dig into all of that, unpack the complexities and try to understand what makes this one city evoke such strong reactions.
All right, let's do it.
Where do we even begin?
Well, I think what really jumps out at you right away from these interviews is this sense of danger. And it's palpable. They're not just hinting at it. They're saying it straight up. Things like, everybody want to kill somebody.
Wow.
That's a direct quote. And this idea that people are always looking to take what you have. So it's not just about crime happening, somewhere out there. It's this feeling that violence is always a possibility.
Right, like a constant threat.
Exactly. It shapes how they see the world, how they move through their daily lives.
Yeah. And it's not even just that, right?
Yeah.
There's also this, it's almost like an acceptance of it.
Oh, yeah.
Like it's normal. One person we came across actually talked about watching videos of murders on Instagram.
Really?
And saying they, how do they put it? They like shit like that.
Oh, wow.
It's disturbing, to say the least.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you even process that level of desensitization? What does it tell us when violence becomes, I don't know, a form of entertainment?
It's a huge red flag. It suggests that those normal societal boundaries, the things that usually make us recoil from violence, they've eroded.
Right.
When you see something like that, it really makes you think about how deeply entrenched violence has become in that community.
It goes beyond just isolated incidents, right?
Absolutely. It speaks to a broader environment where violence is almost expected.
Yeah. And it's not lost on the people living there. It's like they're acutely aware of how this environment impacts people, especially kids. They're saying things like, don't bring your child up in an environment that you don't want to be like. And you're always going to be a product of your environment.
Right.
It's not just about their own situation. It's about wanting something different for their kids, wanting them to break free from that cycle.
Absolutely. It's a powerful statement that you're going to be a product of your environment. They're not just observing it. They're actively acknowledging the force of that influence.
Yeah. It really highlights the stakes.
Yeah.
Right.
It does. It's about the future, about the potential they see for the next generation or the lack thereof.
And speaking of stakes, we came across some pretty grim statistics. Birmingham, Alabama ranks #1 in crime statistics. That's a pretty stark data point, and it really lines up with what we're hearing from those interviews, right?
It does. That #1 ranking really jumps out, doesn't it? It certainly suggests that Birmingham is facing some very significant challenges in terms of crime.
So what do you make of that? I mean, do these numbers point to a unique level of crisis, compared to other cities? Or is it just a more extreme version of something we see happening more broadly?
Well, crime statistics are tricky.
How so?
Different places measure things differently. But that being said, a #1 ranking is definitely something to pay attention to. It does indicate a higher concentration of at least reported criminal activity. But you have to remember, statistics only tell part of the story. They just reflect the crimes that are reported. And a lot of factors, socioeconomic factors, play into both crime rates and how those crimes are reported.
So the numbers don't necessarily capture the full picture.
Exactly.
And then you have these very specific, very disturbing recent events. 12 people were killed in Birmingham in just 1 week. In one of those attacks, a fully automatic weapon was used. And there's this ongoing manhunt, and they're looking for a guy who has a military-style weapon. So we're not just talking about numbers here. We're talking about really frightening events.
No, you're absolutely right. These incidents are terrifying, and they paint a really disturbing picture. The fact that someone was using a fully automatic weapon, that just speaks volumes about the level of violence and the access to these incredibly powerful firearms. And it points to, a potential escalation in the types of violence we're seeing.
And it all adds to this sense of fear, right? I mean, imagine living in a community where these things are happening.
Of course. It creates a sense of constant unease, of never really feeling safe.
Exactly. And we're also hearing these really I don't know, it's almost like matter-of-fact, kind of detached accounts from people who live there. It's striking. Like, there was a high school football game, right? And 4 people were shot,
Yeah.
critically injured. And it wasn't even during the game. It happened on a ramp outside the stadium.
Yeah, I read about that.
It really brings home how violence can just spill into these everyday spaces. You know, a high school football game is supposed to be a community event, something fun, and it turns into a scene of violence.
It's a tragic illustration of how pervasive this problem is. The fact that it happened outside the stadium, not even directly related to the game itself, really underscores that no place is immune.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about this idea of beef, this hood beef. It seems to be a major driver behind a lot of this violence. What can you tell us about it? How does it work?
So hood beef, it's basically localized conflict within a community.
Okay.
It's interpersonal, often very personal, and it can escalate incredibly quickly. And it's driven by this whole mix of things: perceived disrespect, territorial disputes, and then, of course, retaliation.
Right. The cycle just keeps going.
Exactly. And what's really important to understand is how these very localized disputes can have this ripple effect and lead to widespread trauma across the community. People who have nothing to do with the original beef get caught in the crossfire. It really speaks to a breakdown of the social fabric, those safety nets that are supposed to protect people.
Yeah. And we've seen that play out in some of the things we've heard. One line that really stuck with me was, "Dad, grandma gets shot, mama gets shot, baby gets shot." I mean, that's heartbreaking.
It is. It's a stark and incredibly sad reminder of how these personal conflicts can have these devastating, unintended consequences. Whole families, whole communities can get pulled into these cycles of violence.
And the fear just becomes, I don't know, becomes inescapable.
It's like living under a constant shadow.
Right. And it's made even worse by this lack of empathy, this kill more mentality.
Yeah.
Like one person said, why show them compassion when they ain't going to show your F no compassion? It's brutal, but it also seems to be a pervasive logic.
It is a brutal logic, and you're right. It does seem to be fairly widespread in this context. It speaks to this breakdown of empathy, this feeling that you have to protect yourself no matter what, because no one else is going to do it for you.
Right. It's kill or be killed.
Exactly. And when people feel like everyone around them is operating without compassion, it's easy to see how that lack of empathy can become reciprocal, and that just fuels the cycle of violence even more.
So how do you break that cycle? I mean, it feels like any attempt to de-escalate, to step back from that violence, would just be seen as weakness, right? We heard the sentiment that the moment you try, nigga gonna try to get one up on you.
It's a really difficult situation. You're absolutely right. That sentiment, that fear of being perceived as weak, it creates a massive obstacle to de-escalation. It makes it almost impossible to step back from the brink.
You're damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Right. Because any move toward peace, any attempt to break the cycle, could be interpreted as a vulnerability, and in that environment, vulnerability is dangerous.
Yeah, it's a catch-22. Okay, so let's talk about the role of drill music and the culture that surrounds it, because there seem to be some really conflicting views on this.
Oh, definitely. It's a really complex issue. You have one person saying that drill music is goods because it reflects their reality, and then in the next breath, they turn around and say, hell no, it ain't, because younger generations are going to try to imitate it.
Right, like they're acknowledging the music is rooted in a certain experience, but also recognizing the potential downsides.
Yeah, and that contradiction is really telling, isn't it?
About
how people are wrestling with the connection between art and these really deep, really tough societal issues.
So is art just a mirror reflecting society, or can it actually shape society?
That's the question, right?
Yeah.
And it's especially tricky when you're talking about young people who are more impressionable. They might internalize the messages, the behaviors they see in the music.
Totally. And we heard from someone who used to be involved in drill music, but now they're focused on, and I'm quoting here, money get to be shit. Their take was that drill music does inspire bad behavior in young people.
That's a pretty powerful statement, especially coming from someone who was part of that world.
Yeah, they've seen it firsthand.
They have. And the fact that they're now saying it can inspire negative behavior, well, it suggests that they've come to recognize the potential harm, the way it can normalize and even glorify violence in a way that can really influence young people.
There's also this story about young kids mimicking drill music lyrics.
Right.
It just reinforces that idea that even if the music is reflecting reality, it might also be glorifying that reality, especially to a young audience.
Yeah, it's a fine line. And it speaks to the power of culture, how music and lyrics can shape young minds, even if the artists aren't intending to glorify violence. The repetition of those themes, those words by kids, it can lead to a sense of, I don't know, a sense that those behaviors are normal, even acceptable.
It's definitely something to think about. Okay, this is a tough one, but it's a question that keeps coming up.
Yeah.
Can someone who commits acts of violence, can they also be a good person? What do we do with that question?
Yeah, that's a really challenging one. And honestly, it's a question that forces us to confront the complexities of human nature.
Okay.
The idea that a murderer can also be a good person, it comes from this understanding that people are complicated.
Yep.
Their lives are shaped by all sorts of factors, their circumstances, their experiences, and we can't define them solely by their worst actions.
So people can be more than just the sum of their most extreme behaviors.
Right. It's recognizing that people have different sides to them, different facets to their personalities.
It's a lot to wrap your head around, especially when you hear things like, you could probably walk past a murderer and he'd even open a door for you.
Yeah, that's a chilling thought, isn't it?
It is. It makes you question those simple categories we create, good versus bad.
It does. It challenges our tendency to put people in neat little boxes. What we're seeing here is that human behavior is messy, it's nuanced, and people who are capable of violence can also exhibit, normal, even positive behaviors in other contexts.
The context matters.
It matters a lot, and it reminds us that, circumstances have a huge impact on our actions.
Yeah. And despite all of this darkness and complexity, there's still this really strong desire among some people to get out, to escape this environment, especially for their kids. There's hope in that, right?
There is. We heard people saying things like, my plan is to get from out the city, and it's clear that they want something better, something safer for their kids.
A fresh start.
Exactly. And that desire, it speaks to this understanding that the environment they're in is holding them back, especially their kids. It's a rejection of their current reality, and it's driven by this hope for something more, something better.
It's powerful. But then you also get this contrasting feeling, like some people feel trapped.
Yeah.
There's this sense that this life, this street life, is all they know. We heard someone say, I'm going to be here no cap.
Right.
And that's a tough reality to face.
Right. It is. It highlights how systemic issues like poverty, lack of education, and the weight of history can create this sense of hopelessness, of inevitability. When you're constantly surrounded by street culture and you don't see any real alternatives, it's easy to feel like you have no choice, like you're stuck.
Yeah. And then there's the added layer of interactions with law enforcement and the justice system. One person we came across talked about how their life was basically put on hold for 3 years after they were arrested for something they say they didn't do.
Wow.
I mean, that's a huge disruption, even if you're innocent.
Absolutely. That experience really underscores how profoundly the justice system can impact people's lives, even when there's no conviction.
Right.
These legal processes, they can drag on, and they disrupt everything. Jobs, families, mental health. The system itself can become a source of trauma.
Yeah. And we also came across the story of a football player who was accused of hindering the investigation into that high school shooting we talked about.
Right.
And even if he's eventually cleared of any wrongdoing, the damage to his reputation, his future, could be irreversible.
That's a great point. These cases, they don't just impact the individuals directly involved in the crime. The ripple effects of the investigations, the accusations, can be devastating for everyone involved.
It's a reminder that the impact of violence goes way beyond the immediate victims.
Absolutely.
But it's not all doom and gloom, right? There are some glimmers of hope.
There are.
We've heard about community efforts, people trying to make things better.
Yes. That's crucial to remember. There are people who are working hard to improve their communities. They're trying to counteract the negativity, to be positive role models, to show kids that there's another way. It's a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, even in the face of such adversity.
But even those efforts, they're facing an uphill battle. We've also heard people say things like, this shit never stop without no destruction. It's like they've lost faith in the possibility of peace.
It's a clash of perspectives, isn't it? You have people who are actively working toward a better future, and then you have others who seem resigned to this idea that violence is the only answer. It's heartbreaking, but it also highlights the deep divisions that exist within the community.
It's complicated.
Yeah.
And it's impossible to ignore the sheer amount of trauma and loss that people have experienced.
Yeah.
One person simply said, I've seen a lot of people dead. That's heavy.
It is, and it speaks volumes about the level of exposure to violence and the potential for trauma in that community. Witnessing death, especially repeatedly, can have a profound and lasting impact on your mental health, your sense of well-being.
And it's not just witnessing it. We heard about people losing childhood friends to violence on the same night. I mean, I can't even imagine.
It's unimaginable. Losing so many people you care about at such a young age, it's incredibly traumatic. It rips apart your social fabric, your sense of security, and the long-term effects of that kind of loss, well, they can be profound.
Yeah.
And it makes sense that some people are talking about PTSD.
Right. The mental and emotional toll is immense.
It is.
But in the midst of all this, there's this consistent message being shared with the younger generation. Stay in school, get money the right way, stay on the porch, stay away from the streets.
It's a message of hope. It's about breaking the cycle.
It is.
And it's coming from people who have seen the worst of it. They recognize the dangers of street life, and they want better for the next generation.
Yeah. They want their kids to have the opportunities they didn't.
Exactly.
So after this deep dive, taking in all these different perspectives, these experiences, what kind of overall picture do we have?
It's a complex picture, a dark picture for sure. There are no easy answers here. We're seeing a convergence of systemic problems, individual choices, and cultural norms around violence that have become deeply entrenched.
Yeah.
And the pervasiveness of danger and the normalization of violence, those are especially worrying.
And you have this juxtaposition, this tension between the despair and the hope for change, the acceptance of violence and the desire for community upliftment. It's a city of contradictions.
It is. And while the picture we're seeing is grim and the challenges this city faces are intense, I think it's important to remember that these issues, poverty, lack of opportunity, cycles of violence, they're not unique to this one place. They're happening everywhere. But the stories we've heard, those raw, firsthand experiences, they offer a stark reminder of the human cost of these problems. It's a wake-up call.
So, to you, the listener, I want to pose this question.
Okay.
Given what you've heard today, what responsibility does society have in addressing these issues, not just in this one city, but in any community facing similar challenges? What are the solutions? And what stood out to you most from these voices we've heard today?
Yeah, what did you hear?
What resonated with you?
Let us know.
Thanks for joining us.
Yeah.
See ya.